Ladies and gentlemen, we're so happy to be here. We've never done anything like this, so this is like committing a crime. Anyway, one of the things we were wanting to do is kind of give you an inside peek of the radio station. Now, when you've been listening and the music's just tooling around and down, you're patting your foot, and all of a sudden, and it's off the air. And you thought, what's going on? What are they doing? And when it does go off the air, what's it take to put it back on the air? And so David and Matt have spent endless hours at this transmitter site working on things till 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning with bloodshot eyes, reporting to work the next day because they all have full-time jobs. And anyway, I wanted you to kind of get an inside peek of the radio station and let us kind of party a little bit and talk about all this, because this goes on for months, these videos that you're going to see. So what you see right now is and it used to be when we were in school, if you screwed up when you were really young, when I was really young, they'd put this dunce hat on you and set you in the corner. And so anyways, but there's David up on top of the transmitter. This is one of the Harris 100 kilowatt transmitters. This particular transmitter came from KNLS in Alaska. And it was presented to Matt and I at the National Religious Broadcasters Conference. Do you remember that, Matt?
Yes, I do.
And well, tell us a little bit about it, because you were real excited.
A gentleman walked up to me and said they had 2 transmitters they were going to basically get rid of and discontinue, and at that point he wanted to know if we wanted 2 transmitters. At first I thought the guy was crazy, but come to find out he was not. So we struck a deal there at the NRB, and we were able to obtain these 2.
And this one was so clean you could eat off the inside. I mean, they really took care of this thing.
That they did.
It was
and
nice.
However, a thief had entered our building and taken some of the parts off of it. So I don't know what it would take really right now to put it back together, because it was robbed. I went out there one time and we opened the door and was like, where did that go? But anyways, so I don't know if the auto parts stores have a buying process or something where they'll buy transmitter parts. But anyways, a lot of that disappeared. Why don't you move on to the next picture? And any time you've got a memory, you chime in and talk about it.
Yes, so.
Can we go to the next picture?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't know what this is. This looks like something you pulled out of the toilet. So somebody's going to have to tell me what it is and why it's there.
Pretty much. So as an engineer, I don't take a lot of picturesque pictures. So what I take is, pictures of burnt things. It's like, all right, so this is what burnt, and it's more for my for knowing dates of when things went out. That way I can go back and think, okay, so this hose went out at such and such date.
So that's a hose.
That is a hose.
Okay.
So now I know in the back of my head, all right, so this hose went out this time, so now I can start a maintenance schedule. So a lot of what I'm doing is just taking pictures of things so that I know what burned up and when it happened, so that I can be proactive in taking care of some of these problems.
What do you think, Matt? That picture of him holding the hose, does that make him a hose man?
Sure.
Yeah, that hose looks pretty bad.
Oh, it does. It does.
I don't think
so.
However, I will say this: when we took these transmitters over, they were in I would have to say ill repair. They were bad, and you can see from the pictures. Some of this stuff, doesn't happen overnight.
No. So it was like again, a lot of these, a lot of it is just it's arcing that's happening, and hoses that wear out and just keep going, So and you can see little holes, and basically what happens is once you get a hole, then all of a sudden all of the water goes goodbye. So it's a lot of fun trying to replace these hoses, replace the fittings, and all of the copper parts that cause problems for me.
So I will say this on the whole copper deal with these transmitters that a lot of people don't realize is is they use nuclear grade resin to get the water non-conductive. And when the water becomes non-conductive, there's one of the tanks right there that you can see. This tank has nuclear grade resin. It's an ionizing tank, and the copper will literally get eaten away. Now, there is a sacrificial rod, and we replace those quite frequently. But again, you still have multiple copper around the system in a lot of different areas, and it's going to get eaten up. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that other than the fact that it gets eaten up. Now, there's been some articles that's been released from a couple different people that deal with this, to where they claim that if you make the water slightly acidic, it's not as bad. It changes the pH of it, but again, you're still dealing with
ionization.
Yep, and the sacrificial rod works within a certain period, but as soon as it hits that tank and it's going to come back and re-hit copper, it's going to eat that copper up. That's part of the nature of it. There's a decent amount of water chemistry that is involved in this.
Definitely is. So this. The picture that you're looking at here is when the top of that tank popped right off. So this is when that happened.
You can see the threading. It's substantial.
I mean, it is a thick topper, and you can see that it's attached to both ends. So the top of this thing just popped right off of there.
Copper coming in on both sides.
Yeah. So water goes in it and comes in, filters on the other side, goes out.
When something like that happens, though, it's a real thrill because the place fills up like a swimming pool.
Yep, 40 gallons gone quick. Then you got to get out there with a shop vac and have shop vac fun cleaning everything up. So again, that's the filter. So again, there's a lot of pictures of me doing plumbing in this thing. Again, we're talking about the copper. So, a lot of fixing and repairing of pieces, weird pieces, such as this one here. That's at the bottom of the tube.
That's the bottom of the final tube.
Yes, bottom of the final.
That big thing that looks like a beer keg.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing I will say about this is we do have European fittings in this thing and American fittings. So some of these you can't just go to Lowe's or Home Depot and go pick the parts up. Some of them you can. Some of them you got a special order and wait for them to come in, or take a drive to Nashville and put it down on a table and say, "What is this widget?"
Right.
And sometimes they say they can figure it out, and sometimes they can't. So yeah.
I mean,
there's David widgeting.
Widgeting, yes. Lots of widgeting in there. A lot of cleaning everything up, doing a lot of plumbing.
Well, you can see the pump that pumps the water and the plumbing that's taking it in. And these guys put gauges in there that were never part of the design. And then later we had television cameras looking at each and every one of these things. So you could see them.
Yeah, and that made it really nice, because then you could actually do a little bit more troubleshooting, too. You can look and see, all right, so, do I have water pressure? Is there another problem like that?
And you're looking, by the way, if you just tuned into this here video, you're looking inside of the transmitter. Now, this is Garden Hose Central.
Yeah,
you went past that too quick. Garden Hose Central right there. And this is where people that are into garden hoses have a lot of fun getting in the transmitter and looking at the... Did you ever put a water sprinkler inside?
Yes, there's definitely sometimes some water sprinkles.
The transmitter makes its own water sprinkler.
And don't they have to be rated for certain temperatures and...
Oh yeah. This is high temperature stuff. It's stupid expensive. Man, it'd be real nice if I could run down to Home Depot or Harbor Freight and pick up these hoses. That'd be a whole lot cheaper.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely Garden Hose Central here. There's some fancy custom made fittings to replace some of the stuff that had gotten eaten away inside that transmitter.
Yeah, it's and it looks like I don't it looks like forks. It looks like the devil's triangle or something. I mean, I don't know.
They could definitely. Do you think that could be used as a wolf hong?
yeah, that's a wolf hong ceremony.
There you go.
But yeah, some just lots of, again, it's more of me taking a lot of these pictures of things, and
yeah, well, I just want the audience to know how complex they are on the inside. They're just as mechanical as they are electrical or electronic. And go back to the hose.
There's the hose, yes, sir.
And I mean, it's to the point where, okay, look at this hose. This is what the heat did.
Mm-hmm.
And this is original. Is this an original hose that was put in there by the manufacturer, or is where some ninny put that in there afterwards?
That was in there when I started. So
I
somebody, so I think a ninny put that in there because I don't think
they ever intended that.
I don't think so.
No, I don't
There's
think
no
so
sense
either.
in that.
We inherited a lot of crazy stuff like this,
Yes.
But you know what? Sometimes when you're in a pinch or a bind, you've just got to grab whatever you can grab, to get back on the air. So this is just one of those kind of things.
Yep, I've done that where I didn't have the right stuff, and at a ham fest I picked up emergency tape and used emergency tape to get us through the night before I could go and get some parts in the morning. I've done that. So
A lot of jerry rigging.
Yep. So here's one of my favorite activities to do.
See, and actually in that jug, ladies and gentlemen, is moonshine whiskey is what it is. And that's why he's on the ladder, And somebody's chasing him, so he's looking over the transmitter to make sure where they are.
That's right.
No, actually, he's going up the ladder because there's a receptacle in the top of the transmitter where you pour distilled water, and distilled water only. So you have to ransack the various stores, Walmart, Walgreens. Where else did you guys go to buy jugs of distilled water?
Dollar General.
There's every one of them. Anybody that would have it, man. I've filled my truck up. I filled vans up.
The whole back of the pickup truck just jammed with water,
Yep.
and you go through it quickly because if you get a leak in one of these old decrepit hoses, and you've got water everywhere. Now you got to replace it all.
Yep.
It's always fun going into the checkout and they ask what you're using the water for, and you say baptizing cats.
There you go.
Yep, always baptizing the cats. So,
Copper Central.
Copper Central.
What are you measuring there?
So I was measuring. So that was when I was getting getting more copper. I was measuring my copper to make sure that I knew exactly what to get. Yeah, okay. Checking the OD of the copper.
All right.
Copper pipes.
Let's move along here.
So
more garden hoses.
More garden hoses. Yeah, and again, a lot of plumbing. Now there's the bottom of the tube socket. Yeah, so there's that beer keg.
But you can't see that. You can't determine from looking at this. You can't tell what it is.
Right. But that's
But you can see the creative hose clamp. Mm-hmm. Putting the high temperature hose there and the wire ties, red wire ties.
Always with the red wire ties. That's how you know we've been around. Is because you'll see a red wire tie. So something else that's really fun. Not only is it water cooled, but we also have massive fans in the transmitters. Yeah, we do have some of the biggest fans around town. But this one had gone out on us, and ended up having to replace the motor in it. So there's the belts for the motor on the back end back there.
And if they're not adjusted right, when you turn the thing on, it screeches like crazy.
Oh, man,
it drives you crazy.
It definitely screeches at you. And the biggest problem with these suckers is cotter pins. And I absolutely hate the cotter pins and the, I cannot remember the other name of this thing, a keyway. I absolutely hate keyways, as you can see.
Okay, now I see. Who is that guy there?
That is Matthew there.
And I see a hairy leg.
Mm-hmm, that's mine. Holding on to this thing, trying to get that pulley off, because the keyway had gotten stuck on the pulley. So that was so much fun. But eventually we got it off and was able to.
What's this?
Replace the motor. That's the fan motor there.
Okay, and that turns the big fan,
mm-hmm.
which is on a pulley, which is on a belt, and the belt turns the fan, and the fan screeches if it's not adjusted right.
That is correct. Definitely does.
Oh boy, what is this?
All right, Matthew. I'll let you talk for a moment.
So that's the tube socket, and I can't remember which transmitter that's out of.
That was number 1.
Yep. Okay.
And I just want to say this. When we opened them up, the tube sockets sit on this like a frame, and they're lined up so that all the little pin stock has to make contact with the bottom of the tube, or with, I think, probably at that point, the anode. But the thing was crooked.
Mm-hmm.
So we weren't making contact with all the pins, and it was burning them up, and it was burning up tube sockets. Of course, after we corrected that, did we burn up any tube sockets?
Nope.
No.
No. And
No.
the other problem with number 1 on its on this, it was the plates, and I remember this. Somebody attempted to jury rig it without getting the proper what do they call those? The capacitive sheets, or the plate blocking. No, it's not a plate blocking cap, but the little sheets that go in there that block it. I can't remember the name of those. But basically, this whole thing.
And you can see the finger stock here, not to interrupt you. But
Yeah, I mean, there was so much carbon buildup, by the internal dirt and arcing that was inside there that it needed to be cleaned. I mean, this was, yeah.
It was. Yeah, I mean, she was dirty, but once we got done with it, she looked real good. Got all of that cleaned up and all of the finger stock. Again,
10 gallons of deoxit.
Yeah, and as you can see, I mean, we stripped it down. We took it down to its core components here, and you can see there all of that finger stock is real nice and shiny now.
If you look in there, you can see where moisture had gotten in between, and you can see where carbon it was just building, and the arc points. I mean, you can see where it was flashing over.
Yeah.
A lot of this was from poor alignment to start with, and neglect, I would have to say.
Look how nice and pretty that is now.
Oh yeah.
All nice and cleaned up. I think we even worked on it more. I don't know if I've got a good picture of the final install. But again,
look at those fingers.
yeah, that is a very close up of finger stock.
Whoa.
Yep, and then there's something else that we've got to clean up too. That's the copper part that goes. So the tube goes down into the beer keg, if you would, and then that is what holds it in place and helps create the seal so that all of that water cooling can get to the bottom of the tube and keep it all secure and in place. And there's one of our tubes.
That's the 4CV 100,000C.
Looks brand new.
So if you guys in ham radio were thinking about building an amplifier, you ought to consider one of these. This is
They're real cheap.
yeah,
Real cheap.
yeah. From
And-
iMac, brand new, 30 grand.
They're real cheap and real light.
And that one was brand new.
Yeah.
Definitely brand new. She's nice and shiny all the way around. So some of the other things with these transmitters is everything moves. Everything moves in here. So there's tons of components that move around, lots of gears everywhere, and then so for instance, what you're looking at here, and I went on quite the hunt to try to find the official name of this part, and I went all over Dayton asking people, and ended up talking with oh my goodness, I can't think of his name now, but that's all right. I ended up talking with a couple of guys, and we found out what it was, and I was able to get another one of these parts. But what that is basically as the motor turns, that's a little clock, and just pretty much it's a stopper, so once it goes too far, then it'll stop it. But what we were ending up having a problem with was some of these little suckers here were going out and going bad on us.
That's the follow pot within the circuit of the tuning mechanism.
No, he said they're little suckers.
And they are, because what happens is a sucker starts to go out on you, and then things will move too far, or not far enough.
Well, when you go to change frequencies, these are the gut parts that are responsible for the frequency change being able to take place, because that little pot turns in its precision and it stops at a certain point. And I don't know how that's, is it programmed with that little clock thing? I don't know how that works.
No, so there's in the front of the transmitter, there's dials. So you have the dials in the front of the transmitter. This is the follow pot. So the read pot or the main pot sits on the front of the transmitter. This is the follow. Then you have a comparator, not a comparator, little RCA pucks. I can't remember the term. Basically, it compares the two resistances, and when they match, it locks in, sends a status that it's on point. So if either of these become dirty, you can have a tuning mechanism that won't lock in place, or you wind up with a tuning thing where it rocks back and forth, or if your tuning circuit's not working right, then you can have the thing just go way in one direction and slam back to where it needs to go. Just like a dirty pot on a radio, that when you go to tune it up and down, it becomes scratchy. These things do the same thing, which are a total complete pain when that happens.
Mm-hmm. And it's definitely annoying. So here we are in transmitter number 3. You remember messing with
that right there is the RF driver stage. So it comes from the exciter up to this guy, and that's the first RF driver stage where the synthesizer starts feeding into the RF deck.
Now, is that the? No, I can't tell from here. Is that? No, this is in the Harris.
Yes.
Yeah, that's in the SW100 on the bottom side of the RF. RF
in a very inconvenient location. And here we are working on some more of the components out of number 3.
When we first started, I did a considerable amount of work on the transmitters, but these guys got what I would call an intimate relationship with the transmitters.
Oh, intimate isn't even stating it. But yeah, I mean we've had all kinds of fun with little components that would go out. Again, just trying to, and it's a lot of fun learning it too. In learning how the circuits worked, and being able to get into the manuals and starting to just go down the list and see, okay, this is working, that's not working, so
some of the stuff in the manual's wrong though. Wasn't that the case, Matt?
Yeah, especially in the SW100, there was a lot of modifications. It was done by TWR, and when TWR did those modifications, there was some documentation, and some was documented, some wasn't documented. So it became a little hard at times because you were looking at a print that did not match what you were looking at. So then you had to start working yourself, your way. Your way back.
So what is this round disc that looks like it came out of a washing machine?
So that's the IPA tuning, and that's actually transmitter number 1. I have no idea what we're working on or what he's working on there.
So, yeah, on this one here, I was actually cleaning that one up. So it was just part of my normal maintenance, going in there and cleaning that sucker up. As you can see, I got a pile of dirty rags there. Just cleaning it up.
These things turn, they can arc, and then, of course, it forms carbon, and then the conductivity is not so good,
Mm-hmm. Well, once you get an arc point, it's a pain to deal with that later.
That it definitely is. So, again, you just get in there, clean the sucker up, if you need to. So, like...
Oh, my God, I hate those things.
Yeah, we're looking at it. It's clean now.
Oh,
See?
It's clean. Look, yes.
Go
it's
back
clean
to the
now.
photo before. Yeah, there you go.
See?
Look at black it is, and then you go to the next one.
Dirty.
Next picture. Yeah, look at that.
There it is, nice and clean. There's a good before and after picture. And there's a lot of those things to do. They get a lot of carbon buildup, and you don't want arcing and whatnot.
Now, where are you at here, David? Are you in a mobile home?
Maybe that could be a little mobile home.
That's in the
Wires
back of transmitter number 1. You can see all the relays off to the left and the right. Well, you can't see the ones on the right, but I mean, what you're looking at is all the relay logic control for the transmitter.
Tons of wires.
And every wire is numbered, and it goes somewhere.
Not all of them.
Not all of them are. I mean, the wire numbers are so old on the thing that we have to manually trace wires quite frequently because the numbers have rubbed off. I mean, they're just not there anymore, and the wire numbers that are listed in the manual are not there.
The little
Relays.
pieces of tape fall off. You know, Jan Arts was a genius at these transmitters, and we worked with him for like 9 months on the number 2 transmitter, and he would say, "Okay, go to the end of the cabinet." He was Norwegian or something. He had a heavy accent. "I'm going to go to the end of the cabinet down there, look for the red and the green wire, and connect them to post 1 and 2 of the terminal strip." I mean, he just had it in his head. I mean, he knew this all, if you can imagine, having all this thing. His name was Jan Arts. He was just an incredible, really nice guy, and we fell in love with him.
It was.
So the one of the craziest things that we had to deal with is these 3-phase relays. You know, sometimes a phase would not pull in, so we created a test jig on the bench basically, which involved 110 going to the coil, and we just unplug and plug in and verify that all 3 phases each time would lock in, because a lot of these would fail and would cause problems and dropouts. And that was one of the biggest things when we first started doing this, is there was a lot of relays that were just old, worn out, springs were bad, you would smack on contacts, the contacts would smack, and then they wouldn't hold over time, and they would release. And if you look at the logic flow inside the transmitter, and you look at the amount of relay that's there in that transmitter, I'm sure it has its own magnetic field because of all the relays that are in there. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was a constant battle of figuring out and making sure each relay was doing what it was appropriately doing. Because even though that you would test it and it would work for a short period of time, you know, they'd heat up and the coils would stop and one of the phases would drop out. I mean, I think this is a recent one where we were dealing with a problem with number 1, and it would run for 2 or 3 hours, or even 5 hours at a time, and then all of a sudden it wouldn't come back up.
Right.
Well, come to find out, it was the 3-phase relay that was feeding that. But even though every time we would go in there and check it while it was running, it looked happy. And that was a pain because we would be in there and it would test fine. And, of course, these relays are not cheap. They're at $300, $400 a hit. So, I mean, you know, you start getting in, you know, to approaching the engineering of, hey, I'm going to replace 3 relays that look bad. Well, you just spent $2,000. I mean, quickly.
And by the same token, I just want to say this is the same model number and manufacturer of transmitter that WRMI runs. So they face all these troubles just like we did. You know, so let's move along with the radio show.
All right, so
now there's the other side of this thing. It is a mobile home.
It is a mobile home.
Walk in.
Yep. Water pumps. There's all kinds of water pumps.
Oh my God! What?
The seals.
Oh man, the water pump nightmares that we went through.
All kinds of them. This is one of our pumps that that flows all of the water through the transmitter, keeps everything nice and cool. Because again, the tube will get nice and hot without any flow. But for instance, there's one of those keyways on that shaft that I absolutely hate.
Yeah, but look at that. What did you take, an electric drill and drill holes in it or something?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally had fun just, taking it apart one day and just drilling holes. No, that's wear and tear on this thing. So the seal started to go on him because nothing lasts forever, and then all of a sudden now the impeller on the inside starts to wear out, and it's got to be replaced. So again, you have the water flow starts to go down, get an error, transmitter shuts down, and you're wondering where everything went. Well, that night might have been this one. So,
this is fun.
Always fun.
This is fun. This is inside the SW100, okay? And of course it looks totally different, but there's David inside of what do they call that, Matt? That's the hot box or whatever.
No, I think he's in cabinet number 1.
Yes, I'm in cabinet 1.
That's cabinet
See, I'm
1.
wrong again.
No, but the hot box is right next to this, and there's definitely a picture of me
Yeah.
trying to squeeze inside that.
Yeah.
thing.
So the hardest thing about this transmitter is, number one, I mean, the voltages inside this one are very dangerous. I mean, this transmitter can kill you. Any transmitter can, but if any transmitter
This one really kills you.
Yes.
I was at 30,000 volts in there.
Yeah, I mean the box is this thing scares me, and you can see off to the right of him there is this big huge ground bus there, and if you don't wait for the bleeders to discharge and that hits a little early, it'll take out the wall breaker.
But doesn't David look like he's up to something?
Yeah,
Look at the expression on that face. Does he not look like he's?
yeah. But the tube change in these is extremely difficult. It's about a 6-hour job, to swap a single tube. And I don't know. I mean, we could do it faster, but then you run the risk of, other problems. Now, this is recent work where we were trying to track down a problem on this thing, and again, I mean, there's a lot of modifications that was done to this thing, and some of them, this transmitter, believe it or not, a little history behind it, was actually a 50 kilowatt, and then it got a 100,000 watt upgrade kit at some point. That was a field kit from Harris that got put into this thing. In addition to that, what you're looking at here is we were having a problem where the two tubes go into series, and after a lightning strike, we could not get the PDM modulator to fire as it should. And we're trying to figure out, is there a problem with the tube? Is there a problem with the RF driver? All the meters on the front of the transmitter were looking happy. We resolved many problems from the strike inside of it, but we never were able to finally get it to come back up online as it was previous strike.
And you had some help from an expert. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
I'm going to leave his name out of it, but I mean, he's worked on this particular box for years, and he's very renowned in the industry. We spent several nights doing video chats, and we were both just as baffled. And I mean, it was probably something very, very simple, but at the same time, in boxes this size, one little thing that's off, a resistor that you can't hardly see, yeah, I mean, it's...
Well, we had some people come in that were supposed to be experts on this transmitter, and they worked on it, and that little box you see there, later on, we had to put, you guys put some pipe on it or something so we could manually tune it, because the automatic tuning was just completely fried.
Well, so they wound up frying the 24-volt
Power supply.
Which, to get to that 24-volt power supply,
It's not. Nothing is convenient in this transmitter.
I don't know why Harris put it the way they did it, but if you could imagine, behind the white line in there is where that 24-volt supply is at, and to get to it, I mean, if you were a mouse, you would be scurrying to get to it. I mean, long story short, we had that issue, but then this transmitter also had an issue where the control cards were working. We were working towards getting them going, but we also wound up having some other issues. I mean, the belts on there were given out because they were dry rotted due to age. We had other belts in storage, but this was a single frequency transmitter, and being it's a single frequency transmitter, you're going to manually tune it anyways, and you don't have to engage that circuit.
Yeah.
So what we wound up doing is once the motor on the one IPA tuning basically, or is it the plate tuning, gave out, we said, well, we're just going to put a pipe on it and tune it that way, because
You're just fine tuning.
yeah, I mean, we're not really worried about doing multiple frequency changes on this thing. The multiple frequency changes on it were extremely difficult. The cards were old. Capacitors needed to be replaced for them to lock into place correctly. And we had it close for a while, but then again, I mean, you're talking about something that is sitting for years on end. Capacitors dry out, voltages and values change, and it doesn't work like it used to. I mean, so again, this was a manually tuned transmitter, and we just tuned it that way. And it was always fun reaching to the end of that cap with a large isolation rod, you know, tuning the capacitor, and we didn't really care, and we just tuned it by hand because, you know, again, every time you would fire that circuit up, there was modifications done with inside of it. It would just do stupid stuff, and it wasn't worth the headache of trying to make sure that it remembered the last place it was supposed to be.
Well, the other thing is it's 40 years old.
Yeah. So what is this? This is the IPA for that transmitter.
Yeah, I was just doing one of my inspections.
Yeah, and this again, we were still trying to figure out, I think during this one, if there was something wrong with inside the IPA circuit. And of course, we're testing where we've pulled some of the components out to where we can test some voltages. But again, you're very limited on your time on how much you can work on this, because as you go through these things, you have to maintain safety. That's the biggest thing, is maintaining human life and safety. You don't want to jeopardize that. It takes a moment.
It definitely does. So, so we're also looking at the one of the tube sockets here too that we ended up. I took apart and cleaned it all up. So, on another note, we ended up having a bank of doorknobs. This was after that strike that we had, by the way. And
Boy, they're pretty.
They are. They definitely are. There's one of them. So,
they look like some of my old pipes I used to smoke. It
was a bit in a precarious location because you're actually looking at the back side of it. So, like the front three seemed to look okay, but then it was, as you started to feel around, started feeling everything.
Well, that one in the middle cracks me up.
Yes, it does. Yes. Cracks you up. Yeah, so that was the direction that I was actually looking at. So it looks kind of okay, a little dirty, but but then as you started feeling around, then you found that they were all blown up. So, and they definitely went bye.
And the thing, go back one. The thing about a doorknob cap, you can see, like, you take that, you count the first three. You take that first center one that looks clean. But what you don't realize is that solder that sits across right there has a tendency, when these other ones explode, heat kind of makes that expand and it pops off. And you don't even realize that the cap is bad. I mean, they go paranoid schizophrenic. I mean, that's the only way I know how to describe it. I mean, and then you're looking at something and you think it's okay until all of a sudden you pull it out of the circuit and you kind of wiggle it and you're like, oh, that's not even connected.
Yeah, so there's the top of one of them that's still attached. Yeah, because it's nice. Split.
That's definitely one of my old Ben Wades.
Oh.
After I've been smoking Latakia in it.
Yeah, they all went. Then we ended up found some other ones. These might have actually been damaged by the explosion of the other ones.
Oh yeah, it looks dented.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, these are not UFOs.
Nope. They're the shrapnel. That's what it was. Because as I was cleaning up and looking around, I found shrapnel of a doorknob, and I was like, okay, we've got a bad doorknob somewhere. So then started looking around, trying to find.
Yeah, and you got to remember these doorknob caps. I mean, you get a little minor like a little crack like that. You change heat resistance across it, which means the impedance change, which means the capacitance changes as it heats up, and then it's not.
And the hairline crack is your insurance for an explosion in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Now this is the moonshine still that we had out back. Oh, go ahead. Tell what it is. Really.
That is a very, 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 very heavy tube to pull out. So you're looking at the tube and the chimney that goes on top of this tube. So so they're all water cooled. However, transmitter 3 is done by steam. So
it's vapor, as they say, vapor cooled.
Vapor cooled. So water comes in, and the tube just basically just turns it into vapors, and then it goes up to a giant radiator in the top of it, and then makes its way back down into the tank. Auto cooling like that. Whereas in transmitter 1 and 2, the tube is actually submersed in water. So that's the top part of it, and
There's where the sacrificial rod goes.
it is. So my annoyance is why I always take so many pictures, and you can see I've got some little marks there to make sure that I put it all back together the right way. Because if you don't, then nothing lines up, and then you got to take it.
Screws missing on the left side there.
Yeah, because I had most likely already taken those out. Let's see here. There's Matthew helping me, and again, I mean, it is a process to get this thing out of there.
Yes, that's Matthew's hairy arm.
Mm-hmm. There's an old tube.
That's beautiful.
It is.
Now, one thing I will say is the O-rings that sit inside this guy here are not available on the shelf. They are a custom order piece. And the O-rings that we had down in storage did not look all that healthy. There was some that looked kind of healthy.
The O-rings that hadn't been pilfered by somebody.
And as you're looking at that O-ring right there, that you can it's a custom piece. So, and the ones that we had, they did not have the correct rubber feeling to them, which means under heat they were just going to disintegrate. Which we tried a couple, and that's exactly what they did. Is they disintegrated, and
then you start getting leaks.
Yep. So what we wound up having to do is order custom O-rings. How much did those run?
I think I dropped about $700.
Yeah.
Because there's two different types. There's the one there that you see, and if I back up a couple of pictures here, there's another O-ring that goes into that hole as well. So.
And
this is, shortwave radio is magic. I mean, it's pure magic. But let me tell you something. This is the tricks behind the magician's hands that you don't see, as you get that music rolling in off the ionosphere.
Mm-hmm. So there's the tube that we ended up replacing. It looks a little bit better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. So there it is, all put back together. Again, double checking everything, making sure that everything is ready to go.
Yeah, and even right there, you can make a mistake, try to put it in the transmitter and start locking it in, and then you're an hour behind again.
Yes, and that's part of the annoyances of these things, man. You can definitely, if something is off. That's why I take all of those pictures, is making sure that I've got everything all lined up and in the proper place.
Or were you using underarm deodorant when you were doing this?
I don't know. Might not have been, because the look on my face looks like maybe I was. So these things sit down into a socket, and then you've got to use a 1-inch wrench to screw them down into place. So whereas on 1 and 2 they've got that big copper plate that sits on top, and then you put a bunch of Phillips head screws in there. This one, you actually sit it down in there, and you screw it, bolt it into place from underneath, and you only get 1 or 2 clicks out of the wrench. So it takes forever going back and forth trying to put that thing in. So that's why I always look so happy when I'm down there up under a tube putting it in.
Not.
Yeah, not very happy at all. So then pulling it out, let's see here. There's a video of me pulling this beast out of the.
Oh, this is a good video. But this tube is so heavy, you don't realize it. He makes it look like child's play, but And then you got to finagle it out of there. I mean, it's like, how do we get it out? And so Matthew joins in. Hopefully,
Yeah, but you can't fit a fat person and a skinny person, or even two skinny people in the back of that thing at once. I mean, there's no way to do it.
I saw Matthew lifting one of these tubes one time, and he bit his cigar in two.
And then here I come to after we've done all of that work to put this one back in there. And again, I mean, this is oh, boy.
Oh, but you guys didn't do anything on these transmitters,
So again, you've got to put this thing in there and line it up with this tiny little slot that you got to put that in. Oh.
Yeah, and don't bend the finger stock.
Yeah, you don't bend the finger stock. You got to make sure you get this sucker in straight, and that's why I'm struggling so much, because you've got this heavy piece of so much fun.
Yeah, and there I am inspecting your work, getting ready to, hey, you bent it.
There he is.
There's Matthew.
Now, what are you doing there, Matt?
Doing what I do best, thinking.
Now, was that a cigar in your hands?
Oh yes, of course it was.
Smoking in the building?
I think he was waiting on me. Now he's knew that I was videoing, so he went to go check. Let's see here.
That's a hairy arm.
Definitely is. Yeah. So.
Now, what is that we're looking at? I know that looks like the tube, but.
Yeah, I think I was counting the holes for lineup in this one. That's what I was doing. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of making sure that everything is lined up on this tube. It's nuts. Because again, so if you get one hole off, then nothing lines up properly.
Now, this is the Starship Enterprise.
Oh, that's looks like TX2, I think. Yeah.
So why don't you tell what all the little knobs are for? Because people are looking at that going, oh my God, but it's not really that complicated.
Well, what you're looking at is you've got your overloads in the upper left-hand corner, and then you got your statuses / high-low control, and then your resets down below that, and then your door interlocks. You've got your line voltage, which tells you your three-phase coming in minus, each individual phase, so you can kind of make sure that all that is correct. Low voltage meter gives you basically, the IPA small amplifier. You got your bias control, your bias, which tells you what the bias voltages are supposed to be, your high voltage for IPA and PA, screen for IPA, PA, and then your filament for IPA and PA. So the meters on the front of the transmitter are pretty useful. Yeah. So then you're looking at all these knobs, and it looks very intimidating. And then you also see those push buttons in the center. So you have 10 frequencies, and then you have tuning controls for each frequency. So when you press the button, there's a section of cards. There's two sections on the timer circuit that tells it to tune. So you have the plungers. The plunger control is the knob down at the bottom, which is your band selector. So if you imagine your MFJ frequency, your MFJ tuner that's got, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, capacitance, that's basically what that is. And then if you look, you have IPA tuning, PA load, balun, and harmonic trap. Now
the reason why there's so many knobs or rows is because each one of those rows represents a frequency that you may want to go to.
Correct. So if you look at, it's on frequency 1 right now, so that band of all of those knobs, that's all for frequency 1. So you IPA, PA load, so on and so forth on down the line. Same thing for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
and
10.
as you turn those knobs, little servo motors inside move.
Not little, large motors.
Well, there's servo motors that move the components by motor. So you're not, it's not like a ham transmitter where the plate tune and plate load is direct, or even an FM broadcast transmitter, these things drive motors, and so it makes the tuning a little touchy.
Yep. So this one here, it had some issues on the follow and the reed pots on the PA tune and PA load. So the basic tuning procedure of the transmitter would be is you would lower it to about 5 kVA, I think, and then you get on the IPA tune, you find your null, then it starts outputting power, then you start with PA tune, PA load. But first and foremost, before you do any of that, you go to the manual where it sets the harmonic trap. You set the harmonic trap to the designated spot, and once it's set to the designated spot, then you can then tune it accordingly, and then also use the balun to tune out any remaining RF. A lot of people try to use the harmonic filter to tune out RF, or use the harmonic trap as a balun, but that causes erroneous spurs and causes other problems with the transmitter, and you wind up having, burnouts inside the harmonic trap at that point. So, the basic procedure is you set the harmonic trap. There's also a counter on the harmonic trap that you got to go up and you look at to verify that that's correct, and then you start the IPA tune, PA load, and so on and so forth on down the line. So
when this stuff gets off, the problem is you're on the air and then you're off the air, and then you got to go down there and you got to touch it up because the transmitter is so old that why don't you talk about those little things we refer to as pucks?
The pucks are basically it's like a comparator. It reads the follow pot and it reads the pot on the front of the transmitter. And
again, that's the little blue suckers that I really don't like that we were talking about earlier.
The little suckers.
Little suckers, man.
Yeah, and if the pucks were originally made by RCA, they're no longer in production. We were able to find some off of eBay and retrofit some to fit in. Those cards are a pain. And the follow and reed pots, so you're looking at the reed pot or like your control, where you set it, and then you got the follow pot. So
all I know is when they ordered them, we had a 5-gallon pail of pucks. Mm-hmm. And some were good, some were bad. We didn't know. The guy sold them all as is,
Yep.
So.
And you wouldn't know until you put them in, and you had to, and you go through extensive testing, and throw the sucker in there, and then as soon as it warms up, then
it quits.
Quits, yeah. And that's when it gets really annoying, because you think you're good, and you've been sitting around, everything's working really fine, everybody's happy. All right. Yeah, I think we're good. Let's head on home. And then just about the time that you're about to walk out the door, transmitter pops off. Says, nope, you're not going home yet. Had one too many of those nights out
You have
there.
no idea how many times I've seen completely bloodshot eyes from them being up all night long.
So, Matthew was talking about you've got to, on the front there you can see all of the 1 through 10, the buttons that you would push where the one is lit there. It's also over there. That's how you turn the high voltage on and off. Those are all buttons. But those buttons are all held into place by these little clips. And they're very, very brittle old clips. And what happens when you run out of those clips that hold those buttons in, you've got to find yourself someone who's got a 3D printer. So I ended up finding, I had a buddy of mine who had a 3D printer, and I provided him with one of these clips. And I said, "Can you make this?" And he took it as a challenge, and he made me a handful of clips. So we were able to have all of those buttons still seated in place.
So go back one photo real quick. So the other thing I'll mention on this transmitter is a lot of the status lights on the front. The voltage polarity on the light is actually negative to the positive side and positive to the negative on the lights. They used they used the common very creatively, the way Continental designed it. I think that saved a whole bunch of wiring is what it amounted to, so you could set your logic easily. But what this created was a situation where you can't use LEDs and half of the front lights on it because the polarity is off, and nobody makes that bulb where the polarity is backwards from what somebody would standardly do. So you're always constantly replacing bulbs inside this thing. And I did obtain a bunch of LEDs to put on the front, which worked out very nice. But again, you're still running into this issue of, dealing with the bulbs in certain locations because of that polarity.
A lot of very nuances in these things. That's the actual backside of one of those buttons. It's a neat little device. How it all locks in and goes together. So and it is a really it's annoying to solder on the backside of this thing because you're trying to put at least 3 wires on each of those posts. And if anybody that's messed with a DB25 or a DB9, how close all of those pins are. That's kind of the same thing you're messing with on the backside of these buttons and or the status buttons. I've had to replace a few of those. There was one that had gone out.
And somebody previously did a really crappy solder job.
Yeah.
Melted plastic and.
But that's irrelevant.
Yeah, it was probably done with a Radio Shack handgun.
Explosion in the Belden Wire Factory.
Mm-hmm. There's a nice close up on that.
Look
thing.
at that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's awful.
Uh-huh.
Looks like a booger.
Another nightmare was dealing with this sucker here, the harmonic section of this thing. So again,
now this is transmitter 1.
Yes, this is.
And by the way, we endured several lightning strikes where this thing here got whacked, and well, I'll let you get into it. You guys, look at all this stuff in there.
I don't even remember what was wrong when we had to. I know we built a lift system to lift this thing up into the air at some point.
But all those caps you see there on the top, they all have to be lined up in a certain manner and synced up so that when you're doing your tuning and you see the chains up on top and the motors, all this stuff has to sync together. You have to have it exactly right.
And then not only do you have to do that, but you got to get out your VNA, which I have a nice VNA at this point. And you have to actually make sure that it is, according to spec, or else, it's not right. And then you got to try to get that adjusted to the clock drive. There's this chart, and you can see the chart there. That's your clock drive chart down to the lower left that tells you where it's at. But to make sure that clock drive chart is right, there's also another plot chart, Smith chart, with inside the, and you can see in the center, there's your actual clock drive that tells you number drive where it's actually sitting. But to make sure that it is correct, you move up and down. You got to remove some of the other components upstream, downstream, and then clock it on the VNA to make sure that the impedances match correctly across there. Yeah, you can see where it's at. There's your frequency settings and so on.
So on this one, I think this picture here is that roller inductor there. It had started popping off. It's just we had to.
It's old.
Yeah, just kind of I ended up taking it to a machine shop to get work done. So
and
here's
this one popped off. This one's transmitter 2. Transmitter 2. It popped off. There used to be one of those roller inductors in the building down below that we took down there to try to store, but that disappeared. We have no idea where that went, and we spent days looking for that inductor.
We got a pretty good idea, but
but you can see that this burnt out right there, and all it amounted to is the thing jumped track because go back a couple pictures, go back.
There we go.
So that center locking mechanism that you see there's a spring that holds it in, and it's actually that whole section is hot. That center whole section is hot, and there's a square that you see in the center with a spring that provides tension. Well, over time, that spring wears out. Once the spring is wore out, that spring's got to get replaced, and that center, thing with the stupid cotter pin has to get replaced. And, and then also your roller. Your roller is rolling across copper and copper. After a while, it breaks down. It's metal on metal. What do you expect? Yeah. And so that one jumped, and we didn't know it until, it was actually on the air, but, she burnt up.
Yes, she did. So, again, you can see that roller, and the roller is just gone, half gone there. That was, and it also ended up.
Oh yeah, and Continental Electronics, just for the, go back one picture. That burnt up piece you see there, that's the actual roller. They wanted $15,000 for that, and then the coil they wanted, I think, what was it, 30,000 for that coil. Absolutely insane prices.
And they actually sleep at night too.
That they do, every night. And again, there's just me looking at everything, watching. I think I was watching where everything's at. I think we were doing one of those tuning sessions where it had gotten off kilter, and we had to go in and realign everything. I think that's what we were doing that night. I remember some of that fun and excitement.
As you can see, folks, these guys, they never did anything. Didn't do a thing.
All right, let's see here.
Oh, this is getting good here. This is a good one.
So this is one of our videos that we were taking. We were trying to find an arc in the transmitter.
I've got a patented way that we find arcs and where they're located that I will not discuss on the channel, but it does involve video and GoPros and such, and I'm pretty good at it.
If we keep looking, is there an arc visible in this video? Or
Yes, there. I'm pretty sure this one has got an arc in it. Let's see here. Let me scooch real quick, see if I can find it real fast.
Sometimes they're just really hard to see. You can hear them, but you can't see them, like ghosts,
Yeah.
And so this is basically the only way that we could find them, because you can't crawl inside this thing while it's on and look at it and examine it. But you can hear the crack,
Right.
and then it goes off the air. Sometimes the arcs are not big; they're little, and but a little arc will do the same thing.
So when we actually ended up finding the arc, it was actually on top of. Let's see here. Let me find the device, Matthew. Well, yeah, there it is. So there was a slight arc that was happening on this wire here on R28, and ended up having to just replace that.
And that's the screen supply for the IPA.
And it ended up, it was back in there pretty far, and it actually the wire itself had burnt back into the plastic there, into the outer sheathing. So I ended up having to cut that back quite a bit. Something else that we have out there is lots of air conditioning. So I ended up becoming somewhat of an AC guy, going out there and working on these things. So you'd have components in these suckers that go out, and
getting the filters for these became an issue after COVID. It seemed that we wound up ordering them from like 3 different manufacturers, and for whatever reason, these particular units and the sizes that they were really hard to come by.
Yeah, it was an annoying size because, again, you can't get the stuff at Lowe's or Home Depot. You can't just run right over there and get it. A lot of this stuff is, unfortunately.
All right, what's this thing? What's this?
Order. This is one of the many relays inside that thing that I had ended up replacing. So, always taking pictures of what the relays are. That way I can go in there and again, knowing where all of the wires go, That's why I take a lot of pictures, is because I'm not that smart. So I got to know where things are at. That's the control board.
I hate that thing.
Well, I learned how to use. I watched a ton of YouTube videos of people that serviced those things and how to interpret all of the codes on them and whatnot.
This is a control board for where?
For the air conditioning.
Okay.
Yeah, so not only have we become plumbers, RF engineers, mechanical engineers, metal workers, also air conditioning workers.
But you guys didn't do anything.
No.
Yeah, that's the feed point for number one, and that came loose at some point.
If you look at that big insulator on the top, you can see how it's worked its way away from the box that holds it. If you're not looking close, you don't see it, but there's a gap there.
It definitely is. So one day me and Matthew were out there and we were going in for something completely different, and Matthew was looking up and said, "Oh, look at that." I was like, "Okay, fine."
Time to fix the booby.
That's right, time to fix the booby. And there's two of them. You can see the arc gap there as well for the antenna. That's how all of the signal gets out of the building and attaches to the feed line.
Yeah, we actually lost a pair of those arc gaps at one point to ground and had to replace one of them at some point, and I can't remember when that was, but that may have been in 2017 when that first lightning strike hit out there.
It was a fun day when I was working on it because it was raining that day. I remember working on it. 'Cause I had just gotten so there's on the back side of those is some cork for the sealant, and I had ended up getting cork doing that, and I got the Teflon screws and replaced all of that stuff. Again, special order stuff. So again, then you add on. Let's see here. What would this be considered?
Cherry picker. Were you picking cherries?
I might have been picking cherries. Got to inspect everything.
You can see the transmission line, and he's going up to repair part of the antenna system. Some of that you can't see clearly, but there's line there from the rhombic antennas, and he's up there doing something.
Yep, I was up there inspecting components, making sure that everything was in good working order. So going out and looking at each of the points, looking at all the poles, looking at how everything's mounted.
And they mounted the stuff on wood that would rot.
Yep.
I thought, what in the world? Why? The wrong kind of wood.
But again, you gotta hit all of these points, and that definitely took quite a bit of fun. Look at me, I'm just having so much fun up there on top of that pole.
Now you can kind of see, well, in that picture you can see the part of the rhombic attached and the feed line attached to it, and he's on the cherry picker. I remember taking my grandson up there, the two of them on the cherry picker at another time. So we've had cherry pickers out there a number of times.
Yeah.
Had to go rent a cherry picker.
Yeah, because there's, getting up to the top of these poles and being able to look at stuff, you got to have a cherry picker to do all of that.
Now the home they have out there, which we never did any maintenance on, you can see, that was never included as part of our responsibilities, but we still tried our best to keep it up. But after 5 years of ownership not being around, things happen. And of course, we were there to run the radio station, and we weren't there to maintain this place, but that was, part of the blame, you guys didn't do anything, So I don't know what you were doing there.
So what had happened was the gutter had started to fall down. And I ended up bought myself a Harbor Freight little jack there. Cut a piece of 2x4 down just right so that I could jack the gutter up back into place and do a repair on it. Something else that had happened, again, just stuff happens. So now I'm a concrete guy. So now not only do we do gutters, now we do concrete as well and mend gates. So this had started to come loose on the main gate out there at the transmitter site. So again, you had to go get concrete, go up to the house, fill the buckets with water, bring it all the way down, dig it all out, mix it all up. I destroyed that drill that day. Poor thing. Mix the concrete up, getting it ready to go. I had to strap everything to a tree just to keep the pole straight, making sure everything was good to go. We talked a lot about water. That's probably about half of the stock. Because I would go out and purchase these things by the pallet full and bring them home. And if we got lucky, then the place hadn't
Hadn't put it on the shelf.
hadn't put it on the shelf. So they still got it in boxes, which makes it so much easier to carry boxes of 4 or 6 in at a time than one at a time. You know, it's amazing to think of just how many times myself and my wife, or myself and Matthew, have gone into the store and we grab 3 buggies and we fill all 3 buggies up with water. And here we are wrestling these buggies from the back of the store, because that's where they always keep the water. They don't put it up front with the candy bars.
What did you tell the checkout when you were going through?
Like
Baptizing cats.
And that always, you know, the one guy, I remember we pulled up with 4 buggies with water, because they had just put it all out, and ended up with 4 buggies, and the dude looked at me, and he shook his head and said, "I'm on break," and just walked away. He didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, I don't know. You know, there's Matthew.
He looks worried.
He probably was. He was probably messing with something.
Sneaky snake.
Sneaky snakes.
We saw plenty of those out there.
Mm-hmm. There's always reptiles somewheres out there. Had one of them that had ended up taking out the whole transmitter site, because he had crawled up and got up on the pole and shorted the fuse out.
I saw one. I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "It's irrelevant." Anyways.
There's this good wide shot of one of the transmitters. I mean, it's hard to think about how big these things are. I mean, these are, you know, we say they're as big as city buses, but I mean they are. I mean, these things are huge. So on 1 and 2, it's definitely easy for me to be able to climb right into any of these cabinets. It's roomy, it's spacey. Whereas number 3 is the one where you got to contort yourself to get to any of the parts. And this is Miss Holly here. Miss Holly was Miss Holly made sure. She made sure that you heard the radio station every day.
I tried. Yeah, everybody would get mad at all my alarms going off, but I don't. If without it, we wouldn't be on the air.
Frequency changes on and off, and all the different functions.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's every day. That's what Holly did. She would log in, look at this screen here, whether it was on a laptop, a computer, her cell phone, whatever, and she would log in, turn the transmitter on, and turn the transmitter off.
But you know, some people enjoyed when I'd forget to turn it off.
That's true.
Time.
Or if your frequency change was 2 minutes late,
Ooh, yeah.
they would place a call to the FCC and say,
"You're a little late." Yeah. Now that's about all I got as far as fun time pictures. I mean, it's
But you guys didn't do anything.
Nothing.
Did you, Matthew?
No.
Boy,
Yeah.
I'll tell you something. Working as a family on a project like this that's actually a ministry, because we were putting the gospel out everywhere except on Transmitter 1. which we didn't take any responsibility for in terms of their programming. But I mean, it was quite an experience, and I think the experience will grow. And I think our efforts will get bigger as God blesses us as to what we're doing. Anybody want to say anything else?
Just thanks for all the people that tuned in, and I hope you will follow us to where we are now, happy as could be in Florida, and on WRMI.
And again, hopefully that's just a small brief window into why the transmitter went off sometimes.
Well, the other thing I'll say this, I mean, we pulled out some of the, I mean, you didn't even get the pictures in there where we had the using the winch to pull up the harmonic trap. I mean there are so many different things that we invented to do to maintain these things on an extremely tight budget, and we did that flawlessly for a very long time.
We were there 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
12 years of this transmitter maintenance around the clock. You guys were, I mean, you were right up against the walls.
So, I mean, we took a lightning strike on, what was it, 9/4 or 9/5 of this year, of 2020. And even with that, we were still making 50 kilowatts on number one. And we were also we could make, number two, make about 60 to 70 easy with even the modules that were blown out of it. But, you don't want to push those things after they've had, you take a strike and you damage silicone. And, the problem is you're into a scenario, and I want everyone to realize this. You start talking about replacing IBGTs, and the new IBGTs versus the old can't say the words, have different rise times and fall times, and then you start dealing with, silicone on rise times, fall times on switches, and, different things of that nature. So then you start running into this scenario where, okay, well, it's like a FET transmitter. Oh, I'll just replace the one bad FET. Well, that works out good until even your used component has a different rise and fall time. And you wind up in a scenario where you've got, good components you just put in damaging, the half-baked component that you had before. It winds up blowing it up and then blowing up the brand new component. So, number two, we were in a pretty interesting location with it when we left, because as I guess I would say, looking at that transmitter, all the silicone in that back area needed to get replaced. That thing, it you don't risk that, especially at those power levels. There's a story of one of the other engineers that worked on that thing blowing up all 48 modules, and we haven't blown up all 48 modules in any of these things. We've always maintained good caution. We've maintained respect for the equipment. And, again, these things are not toys. They're not your, ham radio amplifier. These things are dangerous. And not just dangerous, but they're fire hazards. They're danger to human life. You can have a water leak and water gets contaminated and you walk into the building and you're dead. So you've got to be very cautious when working around this equipment.
If that water is conductive and you're stepping in it and there's high voltage present,
you're dead.
So
you got to remember, this was really fun as far as engineering goes. The politics, not so much.
Oh, man.
But, at this point, it's water under the bridge, man. WRMI is a lot of fun. We're going to do a lot of cool stuff with them. And our engineering skills speak for themselves. Out of the 12 years that we were there was very little downtime. And when there was, it was because of an actual real problem or a lightning strike that took place. We had, I think it was 2017 and this year. And
the last lightning strike, though, from that point on, We were limping along,
Yes.
keeping it together with baling wire and coat hangers, and no contact with the ownership. They wouldn't return phone calls, emails, or anything. So we were flying blind, folks.
Yeah.
And we kept it on the air, though. We kept it going. And
Yeah. And that's the thing, you know. I mean, it's water under the bridge. There's no hate or malice at this point. I mean, you can only work with what you're given. You know, somebody, you know, said that the grass wasn't cut, you know, outside of the facility. Okay, well, we did it to the best of our abilities, and we donated a lawnmower
with the sickle provided.
Yeah,
The
I
one-
donated a lawnmower, and David would go out and,
A broken lawnmower.
yeah, you're welcome.
I know.
But it was still better than a sickle.
It was better than a sickle.
But I mean, you know, as engineers, it wasn't our responsibility to maintain, you know, the property in that manner. I mean, we did the best we could with what we had. So,
Well, thank you, folks, for watching this crazy video. And as a family, we've had a good time putting it together. I hope that it's been informative. I hope you get a little bit of an idea what we were fighting and what we were doing. And I believe we accomplished quite a little bit. But it's just like Matt says, you can only do with what you have. And you can't do no more. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. All right.
I've been up for almost 30 hours. I'm going to bed.
All right, man.
Have a good night.
Did you stop the file?